beautiful legacy. Every line, every curve leaves a trace of who we were.
Hello and welcome to A Beautiful Legacy. I'm your host, Tiago Pinto. In the past, food advertising in Europe often behaved cautiously. It explained, it described, it justified itself. Illustrations leaned toward realism, typography deferred to tradition, layouts hesitated between commerce and culture, unsure whether the supermarket shelf was a marketplace or a shelf. Herbert Leupin changed that. Working in mid-century Switzerland, a country defined by precision, restraint, and multilingual nuance, he introduced something far more decisive into food retail communication: graphic confidence. His posters did not ask permission, they declared appetite. They simplified food into symbols, color, and gesture. They made consumption feel not only necessary, but assured. Through brands such as Bell and Cinzano, Leupin helped establish a distinctively European visual language for food retail, one rooted not in persuasion alone, but in certainty. Herbert Leupin emerged in a Europe rebuilding both materially and psychologically. Post-war consumers did not only need products, they needed reassurance. Industry needed trust restored, brands needed clarity. Switzerland occupied a particular position in this landscape, neutral during the war, yet deeply connected to European markets. It became a quiet laboratory for modern graphic communication. Swiss modernism, disciplined, economical, rational, was taking shape across typography, publishing, and poster design. But food presented a unique challenge. Food is emotional, immediate, sensory. Modernist, at least initially, was not. Leupin bridged the gap. Rather than imposing austerity onto food communication, he translated appetite into modern form, maintaining the emotional charge of eating while stripping away visual noise. The result felt unmistakably European, cultured, controlled, and confident without becoming cold.
Every line, every curve leaves a trace of who we were.
Leupin's work for Bell, the Swiss meat and charcuterie company, stands amongst his most decisive contributions to retail visual culture. Where earlier, food advertising might have depicted abundance through elaborate scenes, Leupin chose reduction. A single sausage, a single cut, a single gesture, placed against bold, flat color fields. These objects became almost sculptural. Shadows were simplified, highlights sharpened, forms clarified. The message was immediate. Food, this is good, you know it is good, no explanation required. Leupin understood something fundamental about retail environments long before supermarkets reached full scale across Europe. Shoppers do not read, they recognize. By turning meat into an icon rather than an illustration, he reduced cognitive load. Recognition replaced deliberation. Appetite became instinctive. This approach aligns remarkably with principles you confront daily in supermarket communication systems: speed, clarity, hierarchy. Leupin achieved all three decades before contemporary retail analytics articulated them.
Beautiful legacy. Every line, every curve leaves a trace of who we were.
Leupin responded not with narrative scenes, but with distilled atmosphere. Glasses tilted at improbable angles. Colors vibrated against one another. Fruit hovered in carefully staged compositions. These images did not depict drinking. They made you feel it. And crucially, they translated Southern European conviviality into a visual language legible across borders, from cafes in Milan to retailers in Zurich and beyond. Leupin's Cinzano work illustrates a key shift in food retail communication. Products stopped merely describing themselves. They began staging experiences. This logic would later define supermarket end caps, wine displays, and category storytelling across Europe. But in Leupin's hands, it began as a poster. Leupin's strength was not stylistic, it was strategic. He understood that reduction increases authority. Every element removed strengthens what remains. Every decision signals intention. His posters rarely crowded the page. Instead, they organized it with precision. One focal object, one decisive color relationship, one clear typographic voice. This discipline mirrors architectural thinking more than advertising logic, closer to systems than slogans. And importantly for retail, reduction accelerates behavior. The less the viewer must process, the faster they act. In an era before scanner data, shopper journeys, or behavioral heat maps, Leupin anticipated how visual systems would eventually support retail scale.
Beautiful legacy. Every line, every curve leaves a trace of who we were.
Typography in Leupin's work behaved differently from much mid-century advertising. It did not decorate, it confirmed. Letter forms were chosen for stability rather than flourish, often set clearly and quietly. Type anchored the image rather than competing with it. This balance between expressive illustration and restrained typography would become foundational for European packaging systems, particularly in categories such as dairy, charcuterie, and beverages, where clarity signals reliability. Leupin showed that typographic modesty can coexist with visual boldness, and in retail, that balance builds trust.
Beautiful legacy. Every line, every curve leaves a trace of who we were.
Perhaps Leupin's most enduring contribution was philosophical. He treated food not as a problem to solve, but as a fact to present. There were no nutritional arguments, no exaggerated claims, no theatrical persuasion. Instead, His posters communicated something simpler and more powerful: confidence in the product itself. This approach contrasts sharply with later decades of food marketing dominated by messaging layers, health, lifestyle, indulgence, ethics. Leupin operated before that complexity, but his work suggests a lesson contemporary retail often forgets. Clarity persuades more efficiently than explanation.
Beautiful legacy. Every line, every curve leaves a trace of who we were.
The world we inherited from Herbert Leupin. Today, Leupin's influence is embedded so deeply into European retail that it often goes unnoticed. Walk through a contemporary supermarket. You will see isolated product photography against clean fields, minimalist packaging built on recognition, color acting as navigation. These are not coincidences, they are continuations. Private label design across Europe, from Switzerland to Italy to the Netherlands, frequently reflects Leupin's logic: reduce, clarify, assert. Even digital grocery platforms now rely on the same principles. Thumbnail images must communicate instantly. Hierarchies must hold at small scale. In many ways, we can say that Leupin designed for screens before screens existed. And perhaps most importantly, he demonstrated that European food culture could express itself visually without mimicry. Neither American spectacle nor nostalgic romanticism, but something distinctively its own. Herbert Leupin did not dramatize food, he stabilized it. At a time when Europe was reconstructionist visual language, he treated food not as spectacle, but as structure. His work removed uncertainty from the act of choosing. It replaced decoration with order. That shift mattered, because retail environments depend on speed, and speed depends on clarity. Leupin understood that before supermarkets fully understood themselves. He reduced communication to its essential components: object, color, type, and in doing so, he made recognition effortless. His posters did not persuade loudly, they persuade efficiently. And that efficiency established something durable, a European visual standard built on restraint, hierarchy, and confidence in the product itself. Today, much of what feels normal across food retail, the isolated product, the disciplined palette, and the controlled typographic voice, follows that logic: not expressive access, rather operational clarity. Leupin showed that food does not need amplification to sell, it needs certainty, and that, truly, is a beautiful legacy.
Beautiful legacy. Every line, every curve leaves a trace of who we were.
You've been listening to A Beautiful Legacy. This is a podcast about the people who shaped and designed the world around us, often quietly, often systematically, often without recognition. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the show and share it with someone who sees design not only in objects, but in everyday systems. Because behind every aisle, every product, and every routine, there is always someone who designed the way it works. Follow the show and join me again every Tuesday and Thursday. Until then, keep noticing the beauty people leave behind.
Beautiful you see. Every line, every curve leaves a trace of who we were. In the shape of a chair, in the light on a wall, someone's dream still stands tall. But